My name's Adeline. I'm 32 years old, and for the last 8 years, I've lived in a picturesque corner of suburban Illinois that looks like it was ripped from a movie set. And if you're wondering, no, I don't have a job, not in the traditional sense. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I said something dumb. Something so profoundly, unforgivably stupid, that now my husband, Ethan, who's 36 and the most stable person I've ever known, has packed his bags. And as I sit here in the deafening silence of our oversized house, I have no idea if he's ever coming back. It all started with dinner. Yeah, dinner. Of all the pathetic, mundane things to detonate a marriage over, right? Ethan came home from work, the exhaustion clinging to him like a second suit. He works punishingly long hours at a finance firm in Chicago. The kind of job that drains the life out of a person but pays well enough that I've never had to worry about a price tag. I guess you could call me a housewife, but I've always hated that label. It sounds so domestic, so aprons and bake sales. I was never that woman. I don't think of myself as a domestic goddess type. I've always been more into fashion, makeup, keeping up with trends, the things that make life a little less boring. The art of living, not the chore of it. Anyway, the argument kicked off because I didn't cook. I'd had a long day. And by that, I mean I'd spent hours curating a new fall wardrobe on Net-a-Porter, fallen down a 3-hour rabbit hole of true crime documentaries, and scrolled through TikTok until my thumb was sore. By the time 6 p.m. rolled around, the thought of chopping an onion felt like an insurmountable task. I figured, why not just order in? We have the money, right? A beautiful Thai green curry would be far more exciting than anything I could have thrown together. But when Ethan walked in, the scent of his cologne mixing with the stale air of a kitchen that hadn't been used, he got this look on his face. You know the one. It's that toxic cocktail of disappointment and frustration that just sets your teeth on edge. His shoulders, which were already slumped from his day, seemed to sink even lower. He didn't yell, not at first. He just dropped his briefcase by the door with a heavy thud. No dinner? He asked, his voice flat. I ordered Thai, it'll be here soon, I said, trying to sound cheerful, as if this was a fun little treat. That's when he started in on me. Adeline, you've been home all day. The least you could do is make a meal. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I knew meant he was reaching his breaking point. I spend 10 hours a day staring at spreadsheets so we can have this life, and I come home just wanting a simple, home-cooked meal. Then he threw in the comment that lit the fuse. It would be different if you were contributing financially, but you're not. This is supposed to be your contribution. It felt like such a low blow. A cheap shot. I mean, I take care of the house. Sort of. Sure, I'm not scrubbing floors or anything, we have a cleaning service for that, but I keep it decent. I manage the household appointments. I make sure we have a social life. Plus, I look good for him. I spend time and money making sure I'm attractive and put together. Isn't that what guys want? A wife who's a reflection of his success? An asset, not a liability? That's when I snapped. The words came out before I could even process them, venomous and sharp. I don't even know where they came from. Some dark, resentful place I didn't know I had. Maybe if you made as much money as Julian, I blurted out, I wouldn't have to worry about cooking every night. We could just afford to eat out more. Julian. My ex. Yeah, I said that. The second the name left my mouth, the air in the room changed. It was like a vacuum had sucked all the oxygen out. I could physically see the color drain from Ethan's face. He didn't yell or curse. He just got really, really quiet. And honestly, that scared me more than if he'd thrown a plate against the wall. He just stood there for a second, his eyes wide, like he was processing a fatal blow. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of the room. I didn't follow him. I figured he'd cool off. He'd go to his home office, punch a pillow, and we'd talk about it later. That's how these things usually went. But when I went upstairs a couple of hours later, his large black suitcase was open on the bed, half packed with his neatly folded shirts. I tried to play it cool, leaning against the doorframe. What are you doing? You're not seriously leaving over this, are you? He didn't even look at me. He just kept packing, his movements methodical and detached. He muttered something, almost to himself. I can't believe I've wasted years trying to make this work. That's when the panic, cold and sharp, finally started to prickle my skin. Ethan, I didn't mean it, I said, my voice softer now. I was just frustrated and said something stupid. He finally stopped and looked at me, but his eyes were empty. There was no anger left, just a chilling void. It's not just this one thing, Adeline, he said, his voice completely level. It's everything. You don't appreciate anything I do for you. You spend money like it grows on trees. You don't take anything seriously. And now you're throwing Julian in my face? After everything? He shook his head slowly. I'm done. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me wanted to scream at him for overreacting, for being so dramatic, but another, smaller part of me felt a twinge of guilt, not that I'd ever admit it to him. I mean, yeah, I shouldn't have brought up Julian. But it's not like Ethan's perfect, either. He's always so serious, always focused on work. Half the time I feel like I'm invisible to him unless I've done something wrong. So yeah, he left that night. He zipped his suitcase, walked past me without a glance, got in his car, and drove off into the darkness. I have no idea where he went. He hasn't called or texted, and I'm too stubborn to reach out first. Besides, what would I even say? Sorry for comparing you to my wealthy ex-boyfriend I don't even like? It doesn't exactly cut it, does it? Now I'm sitting here in this big quiet house, wondering if I've messed things up beyond repair. Part of me feels like this is on him. If he appreciated me more, if he made me feel seen, I wouldn't have felt the need to say what I said. But another part of me, the part I keep pushing down, knows I crossed a line. A line I might never be able to uncross. After Ethan walked out, I spent most of the night on the couch, replaying the fight in my head. I wasn't crying or anything. I'm not really the weepy type. But I did feel a little sick to my stomach, a strange, hollow feeling like maybe I'd pushed things too far this time. Still, a stubborn pride kept my fingers from my phone. I couldn't bring myself to text him or call. He needed time to cool off, I told myself. Honestly, I thought he'd be back by morning. He'd stormed out before during arguments, but he'd never stayed gone for long. When I woke up on the couch, the morning light streaming through the blinds, and realized he hadn't come home, a knot of anxiety tightened in my chest. It wasn't so much about him leaving, not yet, but about what he might be thinking. Ethan's not like me. He overanalyzes everything. I knew he was probably sitting somewhere, in a hotel room, or maybe even his office, going over every little thing I've ever said or done that rubbed him the wrong way. And if he started putting all those little pieces together, I could be in real trouble. By late afternoon, I couldn't take the silence anymore. The house felt cavernous, each tick of the clock echoing my loneliness. I called him, straight to voicemail. I tried again an hour later. Same thing. I even sent a text. Are we going to talk about this? But he didn't respond. The single gray checkmark on WhatsApp felt like a personal insult. So I sat there, staring at my phone, wondering if I should send another text, a barrage of them, or just wait. Eventually, I decided on a voice note. It felt more personal, like he'd hear my tone and know I wasn't trying to start another fight. I cleared my throat, took a deep breath, and pressed the little microphone icon. Ethan, can we just talk? I started, trying to keep my voice even. I feel like this has gotten blown way out of proportion. I didn't mean what I said about Julian. You know I don't like him. Honestly, the only reason I ever stayed with him was because he had money, and even then, I couldn't stand him half the time. He was arrogant, selfish, and just an all-around bad person. I didn't say it to hurt you. It just came out wrong. Please come home so we can talk about this. As soon as I hit send, a wave of nausea washed over me. I realized how bad that sounded. Really bad. I had basically just admitted to being with my ex for his money while trying to convince my current husband that I wasn't with him for his. But I was just trying to be honest, you know? I thought maybe if he understood how little Julian actually meant to me, he'd see that the comparison wasn't that deep. It was a flawed, desperate logic, but it was all I had. Hours passed with no response. I paced the living room, checked my phone every 2 minutes, and considered calling his mother, but quickly dismissed the idea. The last thing I needed was his family involved. Finally, around 9 p.m., my phone lit up with a text from him. My heart leaped, but the words on the screen made it plummet. It wasn't what I expected. It wasn't an olive branch or an angry tirade. It was cold, clinical, and devastating. Thanks for confirming what I've suspected for a while. You just use people for what they can give you. I guess I'm no different. That one hit me like a punch to the gut. What was I supposed to say to that? He wasn't wrong, at least not entirely, but it wasn't like I went into this marriage thinking, oh, here's someone I can take advantage of. I loved him. I think. Or at least, I loved the life we'd built together. But his text made it sound like I was some kind of calculating gold digger, and that really pissed me off. I called him again, my fingers trembling with a mix of anger and fear. To my surprise, he actually picked up this time. He didn't say hello, just a cold, "What do you want, Adeline?" What do I want? I want to fix this, Ethan. You're making it sound like I don't care about you at all, and that's not true. Isn't it? His voice was calm, but I could hear the sharp edge underneath it. You literally just admitted you used your ex for his money. How do I know you're not doing the same thing to me? Because it's different, I snapped, my voice rising. You're nothing like Julian. He was a jerk who treated me like crap. You actually care about me. Do I? He shot back, and the bitterness in his voice was palpable. Because right now, it feels like all I do is pay the bills and make your life easier, while you sit around and complain that I don't make enough money. Do you even hear yourself? I didn't know how to respond to that. Part of me wanted to defend myself, to explain that I wasn't just sitting around all day. I kept the house looking nice. I made sure I looked good for him. I tried to make our life together comfortable, but another part of me, the part that was starting to feel a sinking dread, knew that wasn't what he wanted to hear. Ethan, I said finally, trying to keep my voice from shaking. I'm sorry if I've made you feel unappreciated. I didn't mean to. But you can't honestly think I'm only with you for your money. Can't I? He said. Because from where I'm standing, that's exactly how it looks. And if that's the case, then maybe I'm wasting my time here. That stung. Like, really stung. I wanted to yell at him, to tell him he was being unfair, but deep down, I knew he had a point. I'd never thought of myself as someone who used people, but when I looked back at my relationships, the pattern was hard to ignore. Julian was rich, so I put up with him even though he was awful. And Ethan, well, Ethan wasn't Julian-level rich, but I had definitely been drawn to the stability he offered, the security. But that didn't mean I didn't love him, did it? Ethan, please don't do this, I said, my voice cracking a little. You're blowing this out of proportion. I made a mistake, okay? But that doesn't mean I don't love you. Duh. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I'd gotten through to him. But then he spoke, and his words were final. I need some time to think, Adeline. Don't call me again until I reach out. And just like that, the call ended. The dial tone buzzed in my ear, a monotonous sound that felt like the soundtrack to the end of my marriage. Now I'm sitting here, replaying our conversation in my head, and wondering if I've completely screwed this up. I know I said some things I shouldn't have, but does that really make me the bad guy? It's not like Ethan's perfect, either. He works all the time, barely pays attention to me, and then gets mad when I don't live up to his expectations. Is it so wrong to want more than just being a housewife? Ethan's silence over the next few days was unbearable. It was a thick, heavy presence in the house, more suffocating than any argument. I went back and forth between being angry at him for leaving and feeling a desperate need to apologize more, to somehow fix it. But I couldn't bring myself to call him again after what he'd said. I hate being ignored, and the fact that he was dragging this out, leaving me in this limbo, was starting to mess with my head. By day 3, I was so worked up I decided to do something I knew I shouldn't. Something impulsive, and probably stupid. I drove to his office. I figured if he wasn't going to come home, he had to be somewhere. And I was sick of sitting around, waiting for him to think. When I pulled up to the sleek, glass and steel skyscraper downtown, I stayed in the car for a few minutes, debating whether I should actually go inside. This felt like crossing another line, showing up at his workplace like a crazy, spurned wife. But the longer I sat there, stewing in my own anxiety, the angrier I got. And before I knew it, I was walking through the revolving doors into the pristine marble lobby. The receptionist, a young woman with an impossibly perfect bun, gave me a weird look when I asked for Ethan. But she didn't say anything, just politely called up to his floor. A minute later, it wasn't Ethan who came down, but one of his coworkers, a guy named David I'd only met once or twice at company parties. He looked deeply uncomfortable as he told me Ethan wasn't there. He's, taken a few personal days, David said, avoiding my eyes. Personal days. The words only made me more annoyed. He wasn't at work, he wasn't at home. Where was he? I got back in my car, fuming. Part of me wondered if he'd gone to stay with one of his friends, but Ethan isn't exactly the type to crash on someone's couch. He's too proud for that. Then a darker, more insidious thought crossed my mind. What if he was staying with someone else? Like, a woman? I hated that my mind even went there, but the fact that he was hiding his location, that he was off the grid, made me suspicious. I went home, poured a large glass of Cabernet, and started scrolling through his social media. There was nothing new, of course. His last post was from our anniversary dinner 2 months ago. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That's when I remembered his email. Ethan isn't exactly tech-savvy, and his passwords are ridiculously predictable. His mother's maiden name and the year we met. I told myself I wasn't going to actually snoop, just check to see if there were any hotel booking confirmations, any clues about where he might be. It was an invasion of privacy, I knew, but my desperation overrode my conscience. The second I logged in, my stomach dropped. My eyes scanned the inbox, and one email, just a few hours old, jumped out at me. It was from a real estate agent. The subject line read, "Follow up on your inquiry." My heart started racing as I clicked on it. The email was short and professional, just a confirmation of an appointment to tour an apartment later that week. An apartment, not a house. Not something for the two of us, just him. I felt like the ground had shifted under me. Was he seriously looking for a place to live without even talking to me? Without even telling me he was considering it? The nerve, the absolute audacity. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking, and called him. Of course, it went straight to voicemail again. This time, I didn't bother with pleasantries. I left a message, my voice dripping with fury. "So, you're apartment hunting now? Is this your big solution, Ethan? Running away instead of dealing with our problems? Call me back." He didn't. Not that night, and not the next day. I spent the whole day spiraling, my mind conjuring up images of him happily picking out new furniture for his bachelor pad. Part of me wanted to drive straight to that real estate office and make a scene, but I knew that wouldn't help. Instead, I texted him again, this time trying to sound more measured, more like the reasonable wife I was pretending to be. "Ryan, I saw the email about the apartment. Can we please just talk? If you're that unhappy, I deserve to know why." It wasn't until the next morning that he finally replied. His text was short and to the point, offering no comfort, no explanation. "I'm not making any decisions yet. I just need space." Space. The word felt like a weapon. That didn't exactly calm me down, but at least it was something. It wasn't a confirmation. Still, I couldn't stop obsessing over the idea of him leaving for good. It felt like the more I tried to fix things, the more I tried to pull him back, the worse they got, and the further he slipped through my fingers. When I finally heard from Ethan again, it wasn't the explanation I'd hoped for. It was a text with the address of a coffee shop downtown and a simple instruction. "Meet me there at 2 p.m. if you want to talk." I thought it was weird he didn't want to meet at the house, our home, but I didn't question it. At that point, I just wanted answers. I spent 2 hours getting ready, meticulously applying my makeup, choosing an outfit that was chic but understated, a silk blouse and tailored trousers. I wanted to look like the woman he fell in love with, not the panicked, desperate person I had become. When I got there, he was already sitting at a small table in the corner, nursing a black coffee. He looked calm and composed in a way that made my blood boil. Here I was, losing sleep, my stomach in knots for days, and he looked like he hadn't a care in the world. I slid into the chair across from him, my arms crossed defensively over my chest, and went straight for it. "What's this about? You looking at apartments?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended. He didn't flinch. He just took a slow sip of his coffee and met my gaze. "It's exactly what it looks like, Adeline," he said. "I'm moving out." For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. "You're... what?" He leaned back in his chair, his expression almost bored, which infuriated me even more. "I've already started the paperwork for the divorce. I've been talking to a lawyer for weeks. I was just waiting to get a few things in place before I told you." It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Divorce. For weeks. I knew we'd been fighting, but I didn't think it was that serious. I thought it was just what married couples did. "Are you kidding me right now?" My voice trembled. "You're ending our marriage because of one stupid argument?" Ethan let out a bitter, humorless laugh. "Adeline, this isn't about one argument. This is about years of me trying to make this work, while you take, and take, and take. I'm done." His words hit me like a slap in the face. But what really caught my attention was the way he was looking at me, Not angry, not sad, just done. His mind was made up, and there was no changing it. Don't act like I'm some villain here, I snapped, my own anger rising to meet his coldness. I've put up with plenty from you too. You're always working, you never make time for me, and now you're just walking away without even giving me a chance to fix things? He shook his head, a look of profound weariness on his face. You had plenty of chances, Adeline. My family warned me about you. My friends warned me about you. But I didn't listen. Because I thought I could make it work. I thought if I loved you enough, you'd change. But you haven't. And I'm done sacrificing my happiness for someone who doesn't appreciate me. Action. I opened my mouth to argue, to throw his own flaws back at him, but he cut me off. And before you ask, he said, his eyes hardening, yes, there's someone else. That stopped me cold. The words hung in the air between us, ugly and undeniable. You're cheating on me? I spat, my voice louder than I'd intended, causing a nearby couple to glance over. Don't even try to play the victim, he said, his tone sharp. You've been using me from day one. At least with her, I feel like a person, not just a wallet. Her? The word echoed in my head like a siren. Who is she? How long has this been going on? I demanded. Ethan sighed, like he couldn't believe I was even asking. Her name is Clara. She's been a friend for a while, but things didn't get serious until I realized this marriage was over. She actually listens to me, Adeline. She supports my ambitions. And unlike you, she doesn't make me feel like I'm never enough. No. I felt like the ground was crumbling beneath me. This couldn't be happening. Ethan wasn't supposed to be the one to leave. He wasn't supposed to be the one to find someone else. That was supposed to be my move, my trump card, not his. So what? I snapped, grasping for something, anything, to hurt him with. You think she's so perfect? Just wait. She'll get tired of you too, once she realizes you're not exactly a prize. It was a pathetic, childish thing to say, and I knew it. Ethan just shook his head, looking at me like I was a stranger he'd just met on the street. I've already wasted too much time on you, Adeline, he said, his voice devoid of all emotion. I'm not doing this anymore. The papers will be ready next week. You can keep the house. But I'm out. He stood up, grabbed his coat from the back of the chair, and walked out of the coffee shop without looking back. I sat there, staring at the empty chair across from me, feeling a toxic mix of anger, humiliation, and something else, something I didn't want to name, regret. And the worst part? I couldn't even blame him. Not really. For years, I'd taken him for granted, pushing his buttons just to see how far I could go, always assuming he'd never actually leave. And now that he had, I wasn't sure what to do. Part of me wanted to fight for him, to prove that I could change. But another, more honest part of me knew it was too late. Ethan had made up his mind. I sat there for a long time, trying to figure out my next move, but deep down, I already knew the truth. Ethan was gone, and it was all my fault. The divorce didn't take long. Ethan was efficient, just like he was with everything else in his life. He wasn't interested in a fight, he just wanted out. Within a month, the papers were signed, the assets were divided, and I was officially on my own. He kept his promise about the house, which at the time, I thought was a win. My house. My territory. But now, sitting in this big, empty place, it feels more like a mausoleum. A reminder of everything I lost. The first few weeks after he moved out were the worst. I'd sit in the cavernous living room at night, staring at my phone, half expecting, half hoping he'd call or text to say he'd made a mistake. But he didn't. Instead, I saw photos of him on social media. One of his friends posted a picture from a weekend trip to a lake house. Ethan was there, smiling. A real, genuine smile that reached his eyes, a smile I hadn't seen in years. And in the photo, standing next to him, with her hand resting casually on his arm, was her, Clara. She was everything I wasn't, pretty in a natural, girl-next-door way. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and she wasn't wearing a scrap of makeup. She looked sweet, supportive, probably annoyingly low maintenance. The kind of woman who wouldn't roll her eyes at him when he talked about work or complain about cooking dinner. Seeing them together made my stomach turn. It wasn't just jealousy, though there was plenty of that. It was this gnawing realization that he looked free. Like he'd been carrying the weight of our marriage on his shoulders for so long, and now that it was gone, he could finally breathe. Meanwhile, I was suffocating. The bills started piling up faster than I expected. The mortgage, the utilities for a 5-bedroom house, the property taxes, the car payment. Sure, I got spousal support, but it was a fraction of what Ethan's salary had provided. It wasn't enough to cover my lifestyle. I had to cut back on everything. No more online shopping sprees. No more weekly salon appointments. No more dinners out with friends, because I couldn't afford to split the check. I even had to sell some of my designer bags on a consignment website, a process that felt deeply humiliating. Each purse I packed up and shipped off felt like another piece of my old identity being stripped away. As much as I hated to admit it, I was running out of options. At first, I told myself I'd figure something out. Maybe I'd get a job, though I wasn't exactly sure what I was qualified to do. I hadn't worked since my early 20s, and even then, it was just a string of retail jobs I barely showed up for. The idea of starting over at 32, with no skills and a resume that could fit on a post-it note, was terrifying. But the worst part wasn't the money, it was the loneliness. For years, I'd taken for granted that Ethan would always be there. Even when we fought, I knew he'd come home at the end of the day. Now, the silence in the house was deafening. The ticking clock, the hum of the refrigerator, they were the only sounds. I thought about reaching out to friends, but most of them were married, with kids, too busy with their own lives to deal with my drama. And the ones who did call only wanted to gossip about the divorce, to get the juicy details. They didn't want to actually help. I was a cautionary tale, a subject for their brunch conversations. Out of a strange mix of spite and desperation, I tried dating. I downloaded a couple of apps, uploaded my most flattering photos, and went on a few dates. It was a disaster. Every guy I met seemed either completely uninterested in anything beyond a one-night stand, or way too interested in all the wrong ways. They were boring, or self-obsessed, or just not Ethan. I found myself comparing them all to him. The way Ethan would listen, really listen, when I talked about something, even if he wasn't interested. The way he'd laugh at my terrible jokes. The way he'd roll his eyes when I spent too much on shoes but still pay the credit card bill without saying a word. I even missed the fights, as ridiculous as that sounds. At least when we were fighting, he still cared enough to argue. One night, after a particularly awful date with a man who checked his fantasy football scores under the table, I came home to the dark, empty house and did something I promised myself I wouldn't. I poured 3 very generous glasses of wine and called Ethan. It went straight to voicemail, of course. But this time, I left a message. My voice was thick with wine and unshed tears. Ethan, I started, the name feeling foreign on my tongue. I don't know why I'm calling. I guess I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. For everything. For the things I said, and all the things I didn't. I know I didn't treat you the way I should have. I took you for granted. And I don't blame you for leaving. I took a shaky breath. I hope you're happy, really. I hung up, feeling a strange sense of release, followed immediately by a wave of shame. He never called back. But honestly, I didn't expect him to. He'd moved on, and it was time for me to do the same. That voicemail wasn't for him. It was for me. It was the first time I had admitted the full truth, out loud, to anyone. The next morning, hungover and humbled, I looked at the foreclosure notice that had arrived in the mail a week earlier. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The house, my last remaining trophy from my old life, was going to be taken away if I didn't do something. That was the day I finally started to face reality. I spent the afternoon updating my pathetic excuse for a resume, trying to make managing a household sound like a legitimate professional skill. It was a humbling, deeply embarrassing process. I started applying for anything and everything. Receptionist jobs, retail positions, administrative assistant roles. Most of them never got back to me. The world, it turned out, wasn't exactly waiting with bated breath for a 32-year-old with an 8-year gap in her work history. It's been 6 months now since the divorce was finalized. 6 months since my life imploded. Ethan and Clara are still together. From what I hear through the grapevine, they're already talking about moving in together. I've stopped stalking their social media. It was like pressing on a bruise, a self-destructive habit that only made me feel worse. Seeing his happiness only magnified my own misery. Instead, I've been trying to figure out what's next for me. After dozens of rejections, I got a part-time job at a boutique downtown. It's not glamorous. I spend my days folding sweaters, dealing with demanding customers, and earning a paycheck that barely covers my groceries. But it's something. It's mine. It's not enough to keep the house, though. The for sale sign went up in the front yard last week. Every time I pull into the driveway and see it, a fresh wave of sickness washes over me. The thought of leaving this place, the place where we built our life together, the only home I've known for my entire adult life, makes me want to curl up into a ball, but I don't have a choice. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and the weight of my mistakes feels heaviest, I let myself wonder, what might have happened if I'd been different? If I'd appreciated Ethan more? If I'd cooked that one dinner? If I'd just said, "You look tired, let me take care of you," instead of lashing out? If I'd tried harder to be a partner instead of just a passenger in our marriage? But it's too late for what ifs. They're a pointless, painful game. This is my reality now. Alone, broke, and starting over from scratch. And Ethan? He's happy. Genuinely happy. The last time I accidentally saw a photo of him, he was laughing, and his eyes were bright in a way I'd almost forgotten they could be. It's funny. I used to think he'd never survive without me, that he needed me to make his life less boring, more colorful. I was the vibrant one, he was the stable one. We were supposed to balance each other out. But it turns out I was wrong. I'm the one who can't survive without him. Maybe that's the cruelest lesson of all.